Let's look at a couple of solutions on how to connect together this cylinder to this cylinder with an arc. So in the first solution, I'm going to start a new sketch on a plane that happens to go through these two cylinders. Now, if you don't have a plane, an existing plane going through those, I'll show you how to create that plane, and then I'll also show you another technique that doesn't require the plane at all. So with the first technique, I'll start a new sketch on the plane going through those two cylinders, and I will project geometry, this circle which projects that as a line, and I'll project that as a line as well. And then I'm going to draw an arc from the center point of this over to the center point of that. And then I'll just, for a third point, I'll just drag that point up here in space someplace. Now I want this point to be centered between these two lines, so I'll do a coincident between this point and this line. That puts the center point of that arc along those lines. I'll finish sketch, I'll do a sweep, and I'll select this arc as a path that I want to follow, and there we see we have completed that. So let's look at doing this a little bit differently. I'm going to drag the end of part marker up, and I'm going to hide that first solution, and let's look at another solution. This one doesn't require any extra work planes. So I'll start a new sketch on this face. I'll project geometry, this circle and this circle. And actually, I don't need that one, so let me just undo that. And I'll put a line here in space, and I'll want that to be vertical, and I'll do coincident the midpoint of this to this point. And I just realized that that is the projected origin, the center point. Let's assume that that didn't exist. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this. And we will assume that that didn't exist. In that case, I would need to project this circle as well and draw a line between those two circles. And then I'll draw another line here, and I'm going to put this out in space vertically. I'll do coincident between the midpoint of this and the midpoint of that line. Okay, so either way, if we have an origin, that was real convenient. If you don't, just draw a line between the centers of the two circles. And then I will do a revolve, and I'll select one of these circles, and then I will select the axis that I want to revolve about. I need to get this highlighted, and I'll select that axis, and I'll tell it I want to go 180 degrees. And there it is. So that didn't require any extra work planes. Let's look at another option. I'm going to drag this back down to the original, and I'll drag that revolution down. Let's say that, so this first one I have a work plane. Let's delete that one, and I'm going to keep the sketch though. And let's say that you didn't have the work plane. So let's say that we didn't have the work plane. Well, we could create an axis. And actually, let me just try something. If I create a plane and I select that cylinder, and all right, so that's not giving me what I want. So I'm going to create an axis through here, and I'll do an axis through here. And then I could create a plane between those two axes. And then I could go ahead and create that sketch, on this plane. So that assumes that there isn't a convenient plane already in existence. Let's turn off the visibility of that. All right, let's look at one more option. Let's assume these two circles are different sizes. So I have to go back to my original sketch. And I have an equal constraint on there. I'm going to take that equal off. I'm going to drag one of these circles bigger. Okay, so the two circles are not the same size. So the way I'm going to do it this time is first I think I'll change these two lines to construction. So I'm going to go back to sketch number 2, and I'm going to edit that sketch, and I'll right click and change that to construction. I'll change this one to construction, and then I'm going to do a new sketch. So I'll select this face, and I'm going to project geometry. Now if these cylinders were different heights, you'd have to do this in 2 sketches. I'm going to do it in 1 sketch, but realize if they were different heights, you would have to do it in 2 sketches. And then I will do a loft, and I want to loft from this circle. I want to loft over to this circle. And actually we probably didn't even need the circles there. We could have just used the edges of the cylinders, so we'll try that. I want to go along, this is the center line, and so it's going to loft that from this one over to this one. I want to try that again without that second sketch. So I took that sketch out, and I'll do loft again, and so I'll select the top of that cylinder and the top of that cylinder. Now keep in mind that this would have worked even if those were the same size. In this case they're a different size, so loft is another option. I would use that though only in a complex situation, say for example like this. Now I might want the beginning of this to be tangent and the end of it to be tangent. Notice it's not tangent there. The center line follows, but the ends are not tangent. So to do that, I would edit that feature, and on the conditions tab I could set the beginning condition to be tangent to that cylinder and the ending condition to be tangent to that cylinder, and now it's tangent here and tangent here. Now I might want to increase the weight of that as well, so I'll edit that feature, and I'll go to maybe that ending condition. I want to increase the weight of that condition, let's say to 2, and so that comes up a little bit higher, let's say 10, and so 10 is too much, let's say 5. Alright, so 5, actually we start to get this little ripple in there, so that might be too much. 2.5. And so we could experiment with these numbers to try to get a smooth curve in here to connect that together. So that was 3 or 4 examples of how to connect together a couple of cylinders.